Yo, Natsu here, back again with part 3 of What If Deku Was the Lightning Dragon Slayer. Before you ask, yes, I plan to continue the other series, it's just that I decided to do 3 parts of this one before basically forgetting about it. So there's a bit more background. So tomorrow I'm going to go back to Deku and Danmachi, and maybe basically just keep going with 2 every day, but basically because I need to start going to sleep a bit earlier than 3 a.m. Yeah, I might sometime only do 1 video a day. So basically yesterday was me trying to go to sleep at 9 to basically try to start the process. Not 9, 10. But yeah, so didn't work that well. I went to sleep. I just woke up 12 hours and a half later, which made me extremely, uncomfortable and really not in a good mood for today. Like, way too much oversleeping. So, yeah, I was supposed to do a video earlier today to basically kind of rebalance it, but yeah, nah, my voice would have sounded really bad, and I would have sounded angry as well. So yeah, so in the last part we ended up right before the guards basically left with the Fire Wolf and Ice Wolf's corpse, as well as the horns and bones of the rabbits. So Deku's weapon, they don't know what he's going to get, but he's going to get something, that's for sure. Mina is going to get no, I should not spoil what they're actually going to get. Anyway, you're going to learn it at the end of, near the end of this part, so I'm just going to keep it for myself for now. But yeah, basically they left, and 1 week and a half later, with Deku, Mina, and Kirishima having defeated more monsters, mostly just the same types of rabbits and a few snakes, as well as finding a small cave where they found a weird lizard. They don't know this, but it's called an ore lizard. Basically, they eat metals, ores, refine it inside of them, and basically add that to their own scales. No, it is not a dragon. It is a lizard-type monster. So, yeah. There are multiple other ore-type monsters, in particular one that most adventurer knows about in this world, in that world, and are easy to hunt, being roach ores. Ore roach, which are basically just, think hamster-sized roaches that basically eat rocks, and those are basically found, near mountains and stuff, and aren't actually that dangerous. And compared to the other ore-type creature, they don't actually armor themselves with the ores, they basically shit it out. So basically, instead of killing those for ores, for metals, they take them, basically put them in contained areas, and then give a certain amount of ores to basically make it all mix inside of them to try and make a stronger one. Of course, because they're only hamster-sized, they don't do a lot of it. That's why most quote-unquote farm. Basically have a few thousand. So to basically be able to at least have a certain amount to do at least one weapon from time to time. But yeah, basically they were able to kill that, which obviously they tried to kill it. It took a long amount of time. Kirishima's hardening, breaking a lot. And basically in the end it was only because of Mina that they were able to win. Since yes, Deku's lightning was doing damage, but wasn't that great. In the end, it was a Mina that basically was able to kind of remove its head with a huge amount of acid, because all of their bodies are basically absorbing mana, increasing their own strength. Mina is the one between Mina and Kirishima whose quirk is the most affected by it. Kirishima is able to harden faster, and it is getting a bit tougher, but not really that fast. Like, his body's not absorbing it as fast as Mina's body, who's in turns nowhere near as fast as Deku's, but because Deku's body literally creates magic in itself, he gets less gain from it, but he still gains a lot, and the other two basically keep up with him, just because they keep training even when he is not, when he is hunting by himself, so they kind of just grew at the same pace, kind of, with Kirishima mostly gaining in strength and hardening, while Mina's mostly getting a better defense against her own acid, as well as a better acid. Yes, her strength is also, her physique is also increasing, but yeah, not as fast as Kirishima for that part. But her overall, if you just look at the overall strength, just in terms of the magic they absorb, Mina would be the one to actually increase faster. Just because, her acid is basically becoming extremely tougher. During that time, Kirishima basically keeps increasing at a slower pace with magic alone, simply because, his body basically becomes that thing, which takes, kind of just doesn't harden with the magic itself at the time, but over time, yes, it does. Over time, yes, it does increase his hardening quirk. So, in the end, it's basically thanks to Mina, basically chopping off its head by putting a huge amount of acid there. Yes, destroying a bit of the ore that was on it, but that doesn't matter to anyone, since they don't even know that it can be used for that. Basically, they brought it back, tried to eat the meat, which was extremely tender, because it doesn't need hard meat when its scales are literally made of pure metal. So, that it's covered by pure metal. So, yeah, over time, after a while, to be precise, 3 weeks after they were left there, La Regula basically came back. What she saw was basically a small campment, which really wasn't that big. It was basically, because of Deku and Kirishima seeing a lot of stuff like, survivalist show and stuff, basically know how to just make a small covering when you're left in the woods. So as long as you have woods and rocks, you can basically do it. They basically made 3 of those for each of them. One for each of them, so 3 in total. But yeah, so when she landed, she basically just looked around, didn't see them, and decided to wait a bit. Because she knew they were still there, through her sense of smell, which they had seen her pass above while they were hunting, so they just kind of came back. When they came back out, they said, well, she looked at them and said that, well, their body acclimated fast to magic. Most likely because... give me a second. Basically, she's talking. Your body's acclimated fast to magic. Most likely because your powers already come from it. So your bodies are probably able to absorb it a bit better than, well, the first otherworlders. Then she basically looked at Kirishima and Mina a bit closer and said that Kirishima's amount of magic that he absorbs is actually lower than Mina's. But they seem to be keeping up pace, with both of them kind of just looking and saying that, well, that's surprising. Then saying about, well, what happened like a week and a half ago, which was the incident with the knights, with her being surprised that people, well, that others basically came here already. She was sure that nobody would come here while she wasn't there. They asked why, and she basically said that as they probably saw before, well, as they saw before those knights put the collar necklaces, they don't share the same language. Those necklaces were made to actually help people from different countries in this world talk to each other. It's a universal translator, basically. And thanks to those, they don't actually know that some people come from the other world still. Since sometimes dragons still bring people here. Most of the time it's to try and punish them and things like that. Or some of them who actually bring their dragon slayer here to train. Since we normally tell them to hide that they're not from this world, but you didn't, I kind of forgot to tell it to you two, you three. Then she decided to speak dragon, to specifically speak to Deku, since yes, Kirishima tried to learn for a week, but it's not enough. And during the 3 weeks that they were there, yes, Deku did try to teach them a bit, but he wasn't perfect already, so, like, yeah, in 3 years he learned a huge amount of it, but it's a tough language to learn when you're human. Mostly because for everyone else it just sounds like roars. Yes, with different tonalities, but yeah. Though when you actually understand the language, it actually sounds normal, kind of. So, yeah, kind of useful. So she basically told Deku that he actually grew very fast compared to what she thought she would grow. But that she was impressed that those two were able to keep up with him. Yes, he was already stronger than them, so... But the gap just didn't actually grow at all. Except if you count his mastery of his power. That grew a bit. But in terms of pure power alone, he would still beat them. He kind of laughed a bit, saying that, well, he does go hunting from time to time alone to go further. Well, those two basically stay at camp and train. Which does explain the speed of growth basically being the same for now. So she stopped talking Draconic and went back to talking to all of them and said that she had their gifts. And first was for Kirishima. She gave a kind of, well, sorry about that. What she gave was actually kind of a long bracelet that did all of the left forearm with a stone embedded in it. She told him that this was basically for the same type of magic as the necklaces, though it doesn't translate beast and monster as well as Draconic, any humanoid language like elves and other humans, because it was specifically made for that. So they weren't trying to translate for beastmen when they did that. Basically she's explaining right there, but when those were made, they still thought of beastmen as just, beasts. So they weren't trying to translate those. Just like for dragon, they didn't try to do it because they just thought it would be way too hard. Because Draconic actually has a lot more tonality and a lot more words in it compared to most other languages. Like almost twice as much, even though it kind of just means all the same. Well, when humans hear it, like it sounds like roars and growls that kind of mix into each other for them. So they really didn't want to try. And for beasts themselves, examples are spirits that can talk human or stuff like that, as well as, stuff like intelligent monsters and such. Those weren't translated as well. So like spirits that can talk human languages are translated, but those that can't aren't being translated. Basically then for Mina, it was basically a crown-like item that basically is looked at in this world as, not really a crown for a princess or royalty, more like an accessory for people who do have a higher rank, but most of the time it's just like, oh, here's a mark that I have power somewhere. Like, it can either be just pure strength and it's given to them, or stuff like royalty and such, but most of the time it's a show of strength. So that's why she gave that to her, which has the same thing. And for Deku, she actually just told him that for him it was a lot harder to find an item to embed the stone into. Mostly because of his particular body. And that anyway, sorry about that, there's bikes coming, I'm gonna have to pause a bit. Okay, and that anyway, because of how those items basically absorbs the magic's user over time to grow stronger, he might actually overload the item too fast because of the lachroma in his body. So yeah, she couldn't make him an actual item like that and had to just give him a normal necklace like the others. Since what she gave to the two others are made of a special metal that grows with the user and actually start to use the same type of magic or special powers as that said user, as well as becoming resistant to it. So basically Mina over time would be able to use acid on her head as well without it melting, like a few days later only, when it actually absorbs enough mana from her For Kirishima, basically the thing hardening with his body, well, for him, actually going to merge completely when he does harden, and then when he unsharden, it basically just becomes normal again. So, yeah, they won't actually have problems with them compared to Deku, whose body basically creates so much magic over time because of the lacrima, basically giving him more than, like, well, basically think of it like this. If you created a small town that could use pure magic to basically function entirely, per second, for a single second for that small town of, let's say, 40 little house, basically, you would need about half an hour of power that is created from the lacrima itself for that town to function a single second, which is huge. But think of it like this. It's basically simply used to power a single body, so it doesn't need that much power. But still, if you count it as a single body, half an hour to create a second of power needed to power 40 houses, which, if you actually look at it, it can be a lot depending on where you are. Basically, don't think little houses like, one bedroom, one bathroom, and the rest of the house is a mix of living room and kitchen. Think of it like a well-furnished house with like 3 floors, basement, floor 1, floor 2, with at least 1 or 2 TVs and stuff like that in every single houses. That comes up to a lot of energy that can be used if everything is active at once. Then count 40 houses to do that. It does go up by a huge amount. I'll tell you that right now. I don't remember in watts, but I know I made the calcul once because of a school project. But yeah, basically, the amount of energy created in half an hour is huge for a single body to use. And basically, Deku's body can also create his own magic over time, as well as basically stockpiling it to a certain amount before his body actually exudes that magic because it can't contain it anymore. Which, over time, that's basically amount of magic still increases as he trains. So, over time, it's going to become a bit less, until she explains that the lacrima actually grows with him as well. So basically, the more power he can create over time, the more power the lacrima can create over time. So like, a lacrima that is passed down from one person to another will basically create a next generation that is a lot stronger than the first one, because the amount of power they get and the amount of power that basically forcefully that they can keep in their body is forcefully improved over time. So yeah, Deku has a little power battery inside of himself that kind of just makes it impossible to have an equipment of that material until he himself is able to control his magic better. Basically, once he's able to stop it from just leaking out to an extreme amount, because literally right now, if anyone was directly sensible to magic, like a mage or something like that, they could literally trace Deku better than they could trace a dragon. Which, a dragon actually lets out a lot more magic, it's just that they control it. Deku's not controlling anything at all and just lets it come out over time. Since, yeah, the amount of magic he can keep in his body is quite limited compared to other people. Just like Kirishima and Mina, but still. If you hear that, I'm not sure if it's supposed to be a bat or something, but I'm pretty sure it's a bat. But yeah, so because of his unusual body, well, compared to every Dragon Slayer that come from their world, Deku can't have yet one of those because he didn't learn to control his magic properly. After all, normally in this world, mages kind of get born with the ability to use magic, well, the aptitude to use it. Well, everyone still has magic in them, they just don't need to control it for spells. But they normally don't increase in power over time at such an astounding rate that Deku does. So basically, he's just given a necklace. After a bit, she basically tells them that it would be a good idea to change places for now, and that in a bit they can just, in like a month or something, they can just come back to get the weapons. Anyway, if they put it in the right containers before, example, a certain type of fabric that normally is used to cover weapons and magical weapons, even if it's underground for a few years, it won't change anything to the weapon itself. So she basically said it was okay, that they could leave, until Deku basically said that they still had some luggage. When he showed the ore lizard corpse, well, what was left of it, she said that that's a pretty rare monster to kill, mostly at their strength. Which, it's not actually that dangerous. In fact, it tries not to, well, to always run away from things even when it's cornered. Since, yes, its body is tough and heavy, but they can't actually attack that well. The only reason they are classed as C-class monsters are actually because they're too tough to kill with conventional means. Which, basically, in the last part, they heard about, oh yeah, the ranking system. They didn't get explained exactly how it works, though. But yeah, so she said if they bring it with her, well, with them, at some point they might be able to actually use it. They asked how they're going to do that, because over time it's going to be pain. Well, it's going to start being annoying to bring around, which she said that, well, once they're well, she said it to Deku, but once he's able to actually learn spells, she can teach him the well, one of the multiple spells that uses space magic, which basically can be used to create multiple different spells, but that she knows specifically there is dimensional storage, item bag, which item bag is actually something that you cast on an item to basically turn it into an item bag. But she knows that one, so he could do it at some point. Though it needs to be given magic from time to time to not collapse it. Well, close it, I should say, to be more specific. The world, well, the dimension that is created will always stay there. So you just need to put more magic in the bag when it closes to basically reopen the bag. So, like, in a world like this one, they don't actually need to do anything, since it basically feeds off of the world's magic. Or if it was always with Deku, right now it could just be fed constantly. The last one that she knows is called Dimension Home, which basically can create, well, depending on the user's mana, can create a living space that basically can have a near infinite area, like I said, depending on the user's magic. So, yeah. She said that for now they can just basically she can basically just put it in hers, but that later he should learn it, basically use it. Mina and Kirishima asked if they could learn it, and she said that it would kind of be hard for them, since their bodies don't actually produce mana. Or at least not yet. She doesn't know how it's going to turn out, since their bodies does have what would be needed to do that. In fact, their bodies absorb magic at an astounding rate compared to the last Otherworlders, like she said before. So maybe because of their DNA and genes basically already having the ability to have mana, they might be able to actually create it at some point to use magic. But they'll have to wait and see. After that, they left, and for the night, basically they came back 3 days later, saw that they weren't there, and basically just did what they were told to do, which was dig a hole, put the weapons in, and put some rocks over it in a certain manner. They also left a message in a crystal as well, inside of the container, basically to leave them a message, which will be revealed later, since obviously I won't say it right now. But yeah, so where they were going was actually a small village, which when they were arriving, they actually saw 2 dragons basically around the village, coming towards where they were. The 2 dragons were smaller than Laragula, so they were asking themselves what's going to happen. When they arrived, when the 2 smaller dragons arrived, only Deku was able to understand what they were saying to Laragula, which was that humans aren't welcomed in this part. This is a village for beastmen who were persecuted before or saved from slavery. Since, yes, even if they are now considered humanoid creatures, not every human's actually going to accept them yet. And obviously, those that were already in slavery weren't going to just be released like that. And there's still slavery already existing for like criminals and the likes, or people that were tricked by evil merchants, which happens a lot. So yeah. Basically, she said that they aren't going to do anything bad, and in fact, if they look on her back, basically Deku punching Kirishima and then telling him, use your quirk, he basically turned into what the dragons basically were seeing as human, and then they just said, he has a rock form. So what, he has earth magic? With Deku being the only one to understand, which he basically jumped, on Laragula's head, which she didn't like, but still, and basically started talking to them in Draconic, missing some words, which they understood was basically like, oh, he's a kid who learned it, so yeah, he might not be that good with it, but we still understand what he's trying to say. So what he's trying to say is that they're actually just trying to train. In fact, they weren't actually from this place. Basically saying that they were from another continent, and she basically brought them here. The dragons ask which continent, with Laragula being the one responding that they actually come from the same continent as her. Not saying a word specifically, but basically making them just think, oh, so protected by dragons. Oh, so they're not affiliated with other humans, normally, from this kingdom. Basically, kind of allowing them, mostly saying that they had a Mina, which they were sure was an insect, demi-human, well, beastman. So, when Deku dropped down, she said in human tongue, well, Laragula said in human tongue, don't get up on my head anymore, I don't like it. He basically said sorry, but that he kind of just wanted them to listen to him and didn't know another way. She said she understood because, well, obviously, just hearing him trying to talk back there would have been a lot harder, since her wings do make a lot of wind. The dragons basically brought them towards the village, which other people were starting to come because obviously a dragon's coming, a bigger one as well. So basically, like I said earlier, the translator stone don't work for Beastman language, since they were created before that and nobody basically tried to create better ones yet. Or I should say they aren't able to create better ones yet, since, yeah, the race that actually made those stones aren't there anymore. So people are trying to do that, but they're only able to create more of what already exists, but aren't able to actually add more on top of it, or to create new ones that have more on them. So, yeah, for now they don't actually know the Beastman language, except for Deku, who was taught by Laragula at the same time as teaching him dragon language, because she knew that she wanted to bring him in that world. So, basically when they got down, they saw Deku and many of them were starting to basically act angry, with Deku kind of just looking at Laragula and asking in dragon tongue, is it really okay for us to be here? Which, them hearing dragon tongue basically calmed their nerve a lot, because normally humans don't actually want to learn it. Even this world's people that actually get Dragon Force don't want to learn it because they think it's just going to be a hassle over time. So seeing Deku using it, they either thought that, oh, he is a human that is a Dragon Slayer but isn't actually against learning that, which means he shouldn't actually be bad, since normally they just think that, oh, if learning another language is hard for them, or that they think it's useless, they won't actually try to change anything with us. But there were also another group that just thought that he was either a young dragon, or someone that was basically, sorry about that, that was actually raised by dragons. Also, Deku basically told Kirishima to keep his, stone form, as the dragon said it, basically saying it like that to Kirishima. With a few of the bug beastmen actually seeing Mina and just kind of seeing her pink skin and finding it very cute. With a few, basically think beastmen can be of literally any monster race or insect race from that world, but with a human form, from basically crossbreeding a long time ago. So over time, basically, they became demi-humans, or beastmen, as the human of that world refers to them as. So them seeing basically a rock human, they were just thinking, how the fuck did a golem have a kid with a human? Laragula basically used her transformation magic to turn human, and basically started going forward. The chief of the small village basically went to say hello to them, because obviously they saw a big dragon coming. They didn't know if it was a king or queen, since she had a pretty big size in itself, but those are rare to see. Basically, dragon kings and queens don't actually depend from the size, they just depend from the strength. So, example, if a fire dragon wanted to be the fire dragon king, they'd have to beat one of the other fire dragon kings that exist already. Basically, it's not limited to a single dragon of said type. It's more like, oh, the strongest one in that region is that dragon king of that element. So, like, depending on the continent, if it's big enough, there could be more than 4 at the same time. For that world, I'm not taking that from a fairy tale, so don't ask me about that. It's just for that world. So, obviously, they didn't know if she was a lightning dragon king or queen, since they didn't know her gender either. After that, they thought, oh, she might be a queen, with her presenting herself as the ancient dragon Laragula, which was a name that was kind of known by a certain amount of people, but mostly people that came from a certain region, which means a few demi-human actually knew of her, and explained that no, she wasn't a dragon queen, but that she did have one kind of related to her at one point. So she was powerful. So people did see her as, well, a force of nature a bit, for those that knew of her. But yeah. Then Deku presented himself using the Beastman language, which did interest them, since, once again, humans don't try to learn it, or at least not all of them. And most that do, most of the time, are merchants that try to basically just exchange with them. But when Deku presented himself, he presented himself in a way that was basically told to him by Laragula to present himself. An in-training dragon slayer. That did make them understand that, okay, that's why he is with her, being human and all. Then he presented his friends, saying that they don't actually understand that language, and that from where they come from, they didn't actually have either demi-humans or humans difference in language, and that in fact all 3 of them actually needs translators to actually be able to just understand the people from this region, in fact, even the humans. So not to actually treat them like other humans from this region, since they only talk with them once and don't really know anything. In fact, the knights that they saw the first time didn't actually, well, that's what he's thinking right now, they didn't actually seem really hurtful against Mina. What they didn't know is that they were thinking that she was a slave. But yeah, that's not supposed to be known for them for a while. And anyway, they won't actually see them a lot more. Only twice. But yeah, you're going to understand when that time comes. So, for now, basically what's happening is that they're brought inside the village and basically being treated as guests. They asked what was basically the reason for them coming, and explaining that they were actually on a training trip for those three. So, basically for them to get stronger, they were going to go a bit like everywhere to do some stuff. So, for now, they're just kind of here because she knew of this place and they needed provision. So, sorry about that. So yeah, one of the beastmen was actually of a tiger tribe, which they love fighting, and basically asked if he could see how strong they are right now. Then she said that he should be careful though, with saying that the pink girl, not calling her by her name just because, not because she wanted to be mean, but just because she said it like that, saying that the pink girl actually can use acid, and that she uses a spear to fight because she's not as physically strong as the other two. Which surprised the beastman, saying that, aren't bugs, demi-humans, supposed to be pretty fast? As well as having a lot more defense than most. With a few of those, bug demi-human as that were around, basically telling him that it's not all of them. In fact, some of their races are actually quite squishy. Then, pointing to Mina, calling her by that name, as they could called her, saying that she looks like her skin is basically just, that's skin, not an exoskeleton. So to be a bit more careful with her, he said okay, and then said that the Rockman though, he looked really strong. Basically just calling him that because he didn't actually know a species for him, even though all three of them are humans. With Deku being no one to talk in that moment, saying that, his skin become harder and harder every time you break it, so be careful. Because at some point, he could become stronger than you after a while. With the tiger demi-human, beastman basically saying that this is fun. Since that means he can reharden heal his skin over time. And that it will become stronger if it breaks. Then Deku said, yeah, but don't rip off one of its limb. He won't regrow that much. Making the beastmen basically, most of the beastmen laugh out loud because, damn, so he's not a golem only. Then he asked directly about, him, and Deku just said that if you wanted to fight him, they could go right now, basically tapping his hand and making a huge amount of lightning between them. Just saying that he's ready. With the beastmen just laughing out loud again, saying that normally they don't say that in the middle of a town hall. They call it a town hall, but it's basically just a bigger building. Even though it's just in a little village. Also, but still. Then the patriarch of the village basically told everyone to calm down, and that if they wanted to try and fight against them, to try and limit their strength at least. As the dragon said, they are in training, so we don't want to kill them, don't we? Then someone just said that, they can go all out, as long as they don't die, she can heal them. Since, yes, healing magic does exist, and quite a powerful one depending on the person. Basically, how they see it is, do you have aptitudes for magic? Yes or no, and then which element you have aptitudes for. Don't actually decide which you can control directly. It's more, which one are best suited for you in particular. Even though if you can control magic, you can basically control all of them. It just changed the amount of time that it will take for you to learn it. And the difficulty you will have to basically control it. So, example, Deku, well, his body was literally modified to be able to use lightning magic, so any lightning type spells, one he actually is able to create magic of his own without just kind of creating lightning outright, since his body basically makes it easily. Like, if you had a chart of how many percent you had control to be close to a certain element, and, for your aptitudes, his would be about 999% of capacity of control. Basically the max you can have, meaning you could basically just be able to use it the moment you learn to control magic, even without actually using a spell. For example, Deku. He doesn't actually need a spell to do that. So, yeah. They said, though, that it will have to wait for tomorrow, since, obviously, it's getting late. But, yeah. Basically, he said that the next day, they're going to prepare a place for them to actually fight, and that after that, they can do it. So yeah, I'm going to end it here. Hope you liked it. Leave a like if you did. And tomorrow I'm going to try to either do What If Deku Was in Danmachi, or one part of both. So yeah, Natsu out.